So, after checking the phases of African nationalism, that was where the phase in nationalism before 1945 and nationalism after 1945. Now, another slide on the table of our content, the rise of social welfare associations. So let's check what was all about this. First of all, we should understand the meaning of social welfare associations. These were African social groups which formed to meet their demands by protesting colonial humiliations and oppression. These welfare were different forms as explained below. So we're going to check different forms of these social welfare associations. But let's go deeper. When we say social welfare associations, what does it mean? The word is said is social welfare. So this is the associations formed by African people to find the social welfare or equality while they were colonized. And this it happened because of the negative actions done by colonialists to them. So different Africans account their groups in different way, maybe by tribes or by professions. They join the hands, they join together and they form the associations. And because they are looking for the social justice or social welfare, then it's called the social welfare associations. So we are going to check different groups of Africans formed during colonialism, and these groups were just fighting for the good life, for their demands and equality while they are colonizing. And that way, this is another indicator showing that colonialists, they were not friends to us, they are not good with Africans. That's why some of Africans joined hands to fight against this enemy called the colonialism. So these were groups. Number one, it is workers' association or trade unions. These associations formed in order to meet workers' demands like low education, low wages, poor health condition, and the lack of representative in local councils. So these were some problems, or those were some problems workers faced, and in order to wind up these problems, workers tried to join hands and form trade unions. So here again, we should have examples of workers' union that fought against those colonial domination. Example of these worker associations, we have this famous one, Tanganyika, called the Tanganyika Territory Civil Servant Association, TTCSA, and it was formed by Martin Kayamba in 1992. Another one was African Association, 1929. Later, that association changed to TA, which was founded TAM. Another one was Young Kavirondo Association, which condemned the Kipande system, including women, taking the women away from paying tax. That was in Kenya, and the Kikuyu Central Association also in Kenya. So all these were associations formed by workers. The main aim, it was to find their rights, to find their good things where they are working. Example, most of workers, they were not given good education, so they were fighting against the good education. They were not given good wages, so they were given low wages, so they wanted good wages. Poor health conditions, they are not treated well in health status, and also they lack representative in local council in making political decisions. So how are we going to get all these demands? It is nice if we support to join our hands. So this was among of the association formed during colonialism. Remember, it was workers' association, or sometimes referred to trade union. Another one, it was peasant cooperative union. They formed by farmers of specific colony. They wanted to meet the requirement of farmers like good prices and subsidies. So again, we had these peasant cooperative unions, as I had said, it's formed by farmers. You should understand, among of the largest sector during colonialism, it was agriculture. So also peasant or farmers got some problems the way it was controlled by colonialists. So they joined hands and they formed different peasant cooperative unions to fight against their problems. And the main problem, it was low prices of their crops, and also they wanted subsidies from government, especially when the season of farming it was not good. So they wanted to get some help from government. And here we have some of example of cooperative unions. Example, the famous one is Kilimanjaro Native Plant Association, formed that year, 1925. Bukoba Cooperative Union, 1924, by Clemens Kiza. The Usambara Native Grower Association, 1931. The Young Buganda Association, 1920. There are so many examples of cooperative unions, but this one is just a sample to show that Africans formed the cooperative unions, especially under peasants. And the last one, it was tribal associations. This is formed by a specific ethnic group to air out their complaints to colonial government, such as poor health service, poor education, and the absence of representative in the local council. These tribal associations, even current, we have, although government is not emphasizing much to have these tribal associations, you may find currently we have groups in WhatsApp or social medias formed by people from the same tribes. This idea, it came from colonialism. People were struggling to find unity and how to get out from colonialism. As I said, currently government is not emphasizing much to have these tribal associations, because at the end it can create a divide and rule, or it can create a disunity among people in the community. But previous, during colonialism, it was among the weapons used to fight against colonialism, tribal association. So again, here we can have a lot of associations depending on the tribes. We can't mention all of them, but we should have some of tribal associations depending on the tribes. And all of them, they had the same complaints, especially good health, good social services that include health service, education service, transport, and other cases. So these were some of social welfare associations. From there, we should have the contribution of social welfare associations to African nationalism. This is an important one. All those what we discussed before, you may use them as in the side of introduction while you are attempting as a question about these cases. But the main part, it is the contribution and the weakness of this social welfare association. How far they contributed to the African nationalism. It was good or it was just wasting of the time. Then let's check their support. Number one is the provision of infrastructure. Social welfare association provided support in nationalism by having this infrastructure. When we say this infrastructure, it does not mean they created or they constructed a very good road site, or they constructed the railway. Those small infrastructure like offices. Some of the offices of these social welfare associations used by nationalist leaders to discuss or to settle down some of their complaints. So in infrastructure here we mean mainly the buildings, those offices that used by nationalists where they are discussing the cases of how to get independence. So that was among of the support. Another one is preparation of African leaders. Here in the preparation of African leaders, we mean that some of people or some of nationalist leaders, before becoming an active nationalist member or at the end became the leaders of independent states, most of them, they came from social welfare associations. Most of them, they were young member in the social welfare association. They got chances in social welfare associations, and at the end, they became active leader for nationalism. And here we can have different examples. Example, Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere was a member of trade unions, member of AA, member of TAR, member of TAN, and at the end, he became a prominent leader in Tanganyika. So, social welfare association played a part to prepare some of coming leaders in Africa. Promoted awareness to Africans, as the work of social welfare association done through a gathering or through meeting of different people. So the time they met, out of discussing their complaints, also they discussed about how to get out totally from this situation. So when they met, they discussed they provided the awareness to some of Africans, the weakness or the problem brought by colonialism. Through spread of this awareness of colonialism, spreading the evils of colonialism, it created a sense to Africans like we need to fight for the independence. So also this social welfare association played a part to spread the education about how it is important to be free and how far colonialism it is taking away our resources. Formation of political parties, here we mean social welfare association, it was a genesis, or it was a seed planted for the political parties. Most of political parties that were active in the nationalism struggle, most of them they were products of social welfare associations. Best example, it is TANU. TANU is the product of Tanganyika Territorial Civil Servant Association, TTCSA, from those years, and from there, from trade union, it later became political party. So most of political parties in Africa were from social welfare associations. And also we understand the role of political parties in the struggle for nationalism. So if we see political parties played well in nationalism, that good result of political parties, it's coming from the seeds planted by social welfare associations. Created tension and pressure to colonial government. Somehow the social welfare association shook the colonial government, and in some places, because of high pressure and tension from social welfare associations, there are some of things colonial government reduced, some of ridiculous actions reduced to Africans. Example, the issue of land alienation, the issue of provision of social services, because of the complaints or noises that shouted much by social welfare associations. It was the lesson, it was the picture to colonial government, like yes, we support to lower down some of the actions to Africans. So it created tension and pressure to colonial government. In that way, we can say it was a pressure group to colonial government. As currently, we have different pressure group like mass media, religious institutions, and also previous during colonialism, these social welfare associations were a pressure group to colonial government, the group that can lead to changes in the community. Those were social welfare associations. So that were the contribution, or how social welfare associations contributed to the nationalism of Africa. I'm sure you understood well. Those are very simple concept, very easy presentation to explain. From there, we can check weakness of social welfare associations. Problems faced the social welfare associations. Number one, that is constant, especially when talking about the projects in Africa, is financial problems. They lack the financial, good financial support. And why? Because most of members who were the member of social welfare associations, colonial government set some of rules, postponed some of workers who are working in colonial government to be members of social welfare associations. And the main source of income in social welfare association was contribution from the members. And if you have employed members, you can get a lot of contribution from them. But if the members are not employed, how can you get the contribution? So somehow colonial government played a part to weaken this social welfare association by terminating those people those workers who were working in colonial government and at the same time are the members of different social welfare association. So they faced the financial problems, lack of skilled leaders. It formed by mere Africans, and you should understand colonial education, it was only provided to the majority or the mass, the few people. And those who got lucky to get colonial education, they were hired in the colonial government, and they again are those ones who were cut off to be a member of these trade unions or social welfare associations. In that way, we can check there were a large group of people in the social welfare associations, and those group or that group of people were not educated. We're just using their common sense to learn things. In that way, it was very tough to reach the goals because they were not educated, they were not aware on how to run this association effectively. Banning of social welfare association by colonial government. As I said, social welfare association, it was enemy to colonial government. Social welfare association was trying to bring the light to the African to see how colonial government is bad to the Africans. And when you are doing so, you are touching the state, you are touching the government, the colonial government. So how to handle the things? Some of social welfare associations were terminated by colonial government by aiming that let Africans keep down forever, and while them they are keeping exploiting African resources. based on smaller groups of people like ethnic group. It was not a mass social welfare association. It was based in smaller piece of area, some places, smaller groups. In that way, if we are not joined at the country, it was difficult to achieve the goals. As you refer the principle of divide and rule. So the more they are divided, the more it's becoming tough to reach the goals. So also somehow these social welfare associations divided the Africans because it was formed in smaller groups and it was hard to reach the goals. Poor connectivity to different areas. Here it's all about physical infrastructure, especially roads. During colonialism, road connectivity to the interior, it was very tough. You can imagine now we are independent state after 60 years. Somehow, yes, we tried with different places, example, regions to region, we are connected by tarmac roads, but still to the interior or rural area, it is a trouble. So you can compare the situation of current, how far we developed, compared to 60 years before, how it was. So it was somehow tough. Because of that, it was difficult to reach all areas, spread the awareness of nationalism or the importance of these social welfare associations because of poor connectivity. So these were the weakness of social welfare associations. By summary, we discussed the three things. Number one, it is introduction of social welfare association, the meaning of social welfare association, but also we have here, we have number 6 here, fear and the frustration from members. Some members, they got fears because some of members were terminated, were murdered by colonial government as to weak down or to slow down the pressure of social welfare associations. Because of that fear, it was difficult again to reach the goals. So I was saying that the number 6, the end of weakness of social welfare association, and actually the end of this case called the social welfare associations. So we should have the summary, what we discussed in these few minutes. The meaning of social welfare associations, then the meaning in introduction of social welfare associations. We check the types of social welfare association that were trade union, peasant cooperative union, and the tribal or ethnic groups. From there, you should understand the support or the contribution of social welfare association to nationalism. We discussed almost like 5 contribution. From the contribution, another side of the coin, you should understand the weakness or the problems faced the social welfare associations are these ones, as we discussed from number 1 up to number 6. By doing so, I'm sure you can be able to attempt the question in writing to social welfare association. But in addition to that, you should have very enough examples to these social welfare associations, especially as we discussed in the introduction, the meaning of social welfare associations and the types of these social welfare associations. Why we need to give the examples? Because this is not an imagination concept. It is really the concept happened during colonialism. So you should have tangible example to cement your concepts. From there, let's go to the rise of protest and religious movement. Another content according to the table of our content, the rise of protest and religious movement. Please take down your pen, take your note and your pen, write the following and listen carefully. We should understand first the meaning of this independent churches movement. The independent churches movement were African churches which established out from white churches. Some of African, after realizing missionary churches promote and protect colonial government, they decided to get out from those white churches and established their own churches that which were against colonialism. Very open meaning of independent churches movement. We should understand that churches, especially in the issue of Christianity, it brought here in Africa by white missionaries. And these missionaries, if we go back again from industrial capitalism, were the agents of colonialism. So the plan of this mission of colonialism, those whites, they included even missionaries as among of the character who is going to play in establishment of colonialism. In other language, colonialists and the missionaries, all of them, they were speaking one language. That's why it was very, very rare, and I'm not sure if anywhere it happened during colonialism, if missionary churches speak about this issue of colonialism during colonialism. The church that spoke about the evils of colonialism, those were African churches. So it went like that. When Africans realized these missionary churches or white churches, they are not supporting us Africans. They are happy because of colonial government. So, yes, they are preaching word of God, but the way they are preaching, we don't see how are we going to get out of this. Because at the end, we are seeing those colonial government officers and the churches leaders, they're tossing grasses. So they're in one side. So what can we do? We got the light about what is religion, what is Christian, what is Christianity. So some of few Africans who were elites in Christian religion, they get out from missionary religion or white religion and created their own churches. And those churches were African churches. African churches, but under the umbrella of Christianity. So they were Christianity, but under the environment of Africans, or under the interest of Africans, and mainly to struggle against colonialism. So here we have the examples of independent churches. The Watchtower Church Movement, which operated mainly in Malawi from 1906, the African National Church and the Church of God in Tanganyika, the Kikuyu Orthodox Church in Kenya. These are some of examples of churches that were established by Africans out of white churches, and the main aim is to condemn the evils of colonialism. I'm sure we are together. I try to explain simply what the meaning of independent churches. Remember, these were churches came out from white churches, and it was built by Africans. Then the role of these religious churches, how far these religious churches were important, the issue of nationalism, their contribution. One, they encouraged unity, and all of us, we understand how far religion is power in making unity. Establishment of African schools. The big question is, why African schools? Why African schools? Because colonial schools or colonial education never intended to wake up Africans or to liberate Africans from anything. It was just to prepare Africans to be submissive to whites. And that was done by having different curriculum in those colonial schools. We checked there in social services, colonial education. In colonial social services, one of the colonial social services was colonial education. In colonial education, you got the central government schools and those rural schools. These central government schools or town schools were the schools for those upper classes, which were white class, those Europeans, Asians, and the Arabs. So they opened their schools and they taught different curriculum, comparing the schools of Africans in rural. African schools, they taught you only numerals, make sure you're able to count, reading, and language, enough. From there, you can hire in those simple white collar jobs. In that way, how can we liberate Africans from those colonialism? So these African independent churches, they saw the gap. They're realizing this education provided by colonialists is not going to help Africans. So they broke out and they opened their own schools teaching Africans and the environment of Africans, especially on how to get out of colonialism. They influenced the African not paying tax. Why influencing Africa not paying tax? Even up today, we know the main source of foreign government is tax. So if people are not paying tax, it means the government is going to lack income. And if the government is going to lack income or revenue, they're going to miss the budget and the expenditure is going down. So in short, the government is going to corrupt because they don't have money. So it was the same event during colonialism. Some of colony, they were learning itself for independent without getting help from outside or from the Western government. The main source of the colony was tax. So these religious leaders saw it. If people not pay tax, the colonial government is going to lack find the money to run different activities in the colony, and then maybe we can be free. They can raise our country. Center for African Nationalist Meeting, as we check the support of Social Welfare Association, the officers of Social Welfare Association used as a discussion point. Also, these churches in the front door, we are seeing this service or ministry service go on, but behind of the door, nationalist leaders discussing about how to get independent. So somehow these churches played the role acting as a center for discussion. They convey the message for freedom, also in the daily teaching or Sunday service, out of the words in the Bible or in those holy books. Also they added the issue of we need freedom, freedom, freedom. So these are the role of religious protest movement in Africa and how they played in struggle for the independence. From there, let's check the weakness of this religious protest movement. We have a number of weaknesses here or challenges. Number one is they use the same Bible to end evils of white churches. That is it was the problem. They used the Bible, and this Bible it was written by whites, and the same verses, the same words they were using to get out from colonialism. Somewhere I heard people they are saying, Africans, we accepted, Africans, we opposed a lot of things, a lot of evils done by whites or done by colonialists. We opposed the slave trades, we opposed those forced labor, we opposed the issue of taxi, those kind of taxi, head taxi, maternity taxi, heart taxi, all those kind of evils we opposed. But except one thing, we are not saying it was an evil, and even up today we are not saying it is evil. Christianity. Not a religion, it is Christianity. We failed to oppose Christianity. We opposed everything, but the slave of Christianity, we don't say this it was a slave. So that is among of the weakness. The same weapon that used by your boss, and the boss know more about that weapon. You are just a student of that weapon. How are you planning to end your boss? It was somehow difficult. Simple here. If Africans were really about this opposition, they should say we are no longer accepting this kind of religion. We are coming up to our own religion, or going back to African traditional religion. Shortage of educated staff, as usual. It was a problem during colonialism because very few Africans were educated, especially sons of chiefs. Financial problem is constant. Members conflicts. Actually, whenever there is a group of people, conflict should rise up there, especially when some of them they want to get benefit from Europeans. Competition with the missionary churches over the convent. Also, it was a battle who will get a high number of members. How will get a high number of members? As currently we see there are so many churches. Somehow we don't know what's going on to those leaders of churches. Maybe somehow they are fighting to get numbers of all these members. So it was the same even during colonialism. There is a competition between white churches and the black churches or African churches, especially in the issue of members. And that way, in some places, get African churches out of the rail, struggled for the independence, and they started struggling for the members. So by saying that, these were the weakness of religious protest movement during struggle for the independence. So I'm sure you got the things. Up now discussed the two concepts: social welfare associations and the rise of protest movement, religious protest movement.